And we're joined by Valerie.
Hi, I'm Valerie Beachley. I'm the College and Career Center. We're coming to you today to bring you our Fun Friday webinar, part of our Essential Skills for the New Economy. We know we're facing monumental unemployment rates right now, so we wanted to design a series of webinars that will give you useful information to get back in the job market so you're not affected so much by any cuts, and to keep you having options so you can keep income coming in for your family. Yeah. So I'm going to let Arlene introduce our speaker for today. Okay,
so today I am so happy to have DaVita. We have Jose here from DaVita. Jose is he is the recruiting analyst for DaVita. I actually work with him for our billers, and he helps support, and he's just such great. He has some really great tools. So who better to hear about resumes than from one of the recruiters from DaVita? He's going to go over the do's, the don'ts, and how to provide a knockout resume. So before we get started, we do have some house rules. We ask that you please give your undivided attention to our presenter and that you give him the respect. Please silence your mics. And if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat bar. Valerie and I will be monitoring the chat bar, so that way all your questions can be answered. So we go ahead and we present Jose. Thank you, Jose, again for joining us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for allowing me this opportunity to connect with your students and anyone that's really interested to learn a little bit more about resumes. So I'm really excited to be able to share some of those tips. One of my main objectives and goals for today is to be your valuable resource. I will be talking about very general, high-level overview things that will help you create the best resumes possible.
If you can please mute your mic.
Sorry, I think there's...
Reminder, everyone, please mute your mics. We want to give all the courtesy to our presenter today.
So I'm going to go ahead and just highlight a little bit about myself so that you all know a little bit about my background. My name is Jose, and I am the recruiting analyst for DaVita in the West. And I specifically focus and work with all of our operational teams within our business office. I also support some opportunities in the clinical realm, but for the most part, I really specialize in that business model, business office recruiting. I've been with DaVita for about 1.5 years. And through DaVita, I work on a lot of different special projects, a lot of webinars, job fairs, outreach, which is why I'm really partnering a lot with your school to be able to bring this webinar here. I am very big, my fulfillment comes from engaging and helping. So I will provide some of my personal information at the end for anyone to ask questions or reach out if you have any very specific questions. But with that, we're gonna go ahead and get started to learn a little bit about resumes. So the first part that I want to talk about is understanding why resumes are important. The biggest thing for me is resumes pretty much are the paper that's going to open the door for you to be able to interview. Now, the interview process is going to be the one where you're really going to be able to sell your skills, sell your experience. But before we get there, the first step is going to be having the best resume possible. So we're going to break down the body of a resume just so that we have clarity on what to expect and what we should be including. So we're going to go ahead and start here. So we need to understand the structure of a resume. So in our resume, we have our objectives. So your objective should be a very short, maybe 1 to 2 sentence description of what interests you about this role or why you are applying for this specific position, maybe why you're transitioning into this role, right? In your resume, you also have your education portion. So during that section, you're able to highlight any specific certifications that you might have that will help yield the best results for the type of career you're going for. You will also be able to highlight maybe key classes or key certificates or certifications that you've been able to complete to strengthen your skill set. So that education portion is extremely important, and it's very good to be specific and detailed on it. Then we move over to our experience section. So in your experience, what you're trying to do is to highlight all of those transferable skills that will either A, transfer into this new industry or this new role that you're applying, or you can leverage everything in your experiences to talk about all of the great things that you were able to accomplish to be able to prove to this specific employer that you'll be able to accomplish the same metrics in this new role. Now, like I said, these is high-level overview, and what we're learning is the outline or the basic structure of the components of the resume. We will dive deep in a little bit more of the questions I'm sure you probably all have, but I think it's very important for us to understand these specific sections, right? After we talk about our experience, we might have a section that highlights our skills. So in this section, you really want to talk about how you identify your skills to that recruiter. You don't want to necessarily include the same skills that everyone is including. If you want to stand out for a specific job, I really recommend pulling that job description to identify what they're looking for. And that way you can tailor your document to your audience, right? So in that skill section, we want to talk about hard skills and soft skills. Some of your hard skills could be any skills, maybe from programs that you know how to use, such as Microsoft Word, maybe Google Hangouts, or any other applications. If you're in a billing class, or if you're getting your billing certification, maybe highlight the types of programs that you're using and how you're able to navigate through them. And then don't forget your soft skills. Maybe you are really great at public speaking and at being able to deliver content or communicate very effectively, right? So understand where you're applying for so that you can tailor these skills to that audience. So that takes us to this next section. So what are the types of resumes? And I get this question asked all the time because we want to make sure that I'm representing myself the best way possible as a candidate, right? But one of the things you want to understand is there are two types of resumes that you can leverage depending on the type of past experiences you have, depending on the type of certifications or education you're currently getting, or maybe just depending on the industry. So I'll be able to highlight the two types of resumes, which might be able to give you a better picture from where to begin. So let's go ahead and start with chronological resumes. So in chronological resumes, we're outlining all of our experience starting from the very top with the objective. And the number one thing that we're highlighting is our experience. So the reason why it's so important to highlight your experience in a chronological resume is think about this resume when you're applying for the same field or maybe the same role in another organization. If you already have similar experience, this is going to be the best way to outline it because you're starting with your objective, why you're pursuing this specific role, and then you transition directly into the applied experiences that you have that will automatically yield great results in this new role you're trying to apply for. Then you would highlight your education to let them know the type of education or certification you took. And again, remember the importance here is in that chronological order. You culminate with all of your skills and or maybe any activities you might have done to support the employer understanding that you have the right competencies, skills, and experience to be successful in this role. So again, if you are staying within your same industry and you really have a lot of years of experience that can transition easily to a very similar role, maybe chronological resumes might be the best option for you. Right here on the left, we see an example of a basic chronological resume. And now it's not necessarily very flashy, but things that we can automatically see. Your name is nice and big. We're able to see very key small descriptions of your experience, your education. It's nicely formatted and easy to digest. One of the things that I want you all to think about is, unfortunately, due to our current crisis, unemployment is skyrocketing, which means that a lot of different candidates are looking and competing for similar jobs. So if you want to stand out, sometimes understanding that less information and more detailed information will yield better results. So chronological resumes is maybe a good starting point for some of you. Now, the second type of resume is a custom resume. In this particular resume, you can use it for a couple of things. Maybe you're switching industries, and maybe you have no experience in the specific industry or role that you're trying to switch into, but you identify that you have skills that you can apply in this new role, right? So one of the things that you can do is create a custom resume. In the custom resume, you're highlighting the key attributes that let your employer know, hey, I might not be or have the experience here, but you're highlighting your education, maybe any additional courses you took. Maybe you have a really compelling objective that lets them know why this is a change of pace, why you're changing industry. This is also a really good resume for you to leverage if you have any gaps in your employment, for you to be able to explain certain things in your employment history. Custom resumes are really focused on the skills that you're going to be able to deliver in a new setting. So think of custom resumes as more putting all of your ducks in a row so that you can let your employer know, hey, take a chance on me, because I know that I've done all this pre-work and I have all of this experience, which I know will make me a successful candidate for this specific position. So in your custom resumes, you can move around these concepts. They don't necessarily have to be in chronological order, but it's very important for you to pay attention. Who is your audience? What is important to them? And am I including the right information, or am I including the information that I think they want to hear, right? I think one of the biggest obstacles when I'm trying to help some candidates with resume critiquing or building is a lot of the times you're trying to give us what the recruiters want to see. No, what we're looking for are these basic things. What's your objective, your education, your experience? Don't add any additional things that you do not need to add. But I will caveat that by saying it really just depends on your audience. So knowing your audience is a very, very big, important topic for me. If you're a graphic designer, your resume is expected to stand out from the crowd, make sure that we get to see a little bit more of that creativity and how you're able to leverage that and show that potential employer that you are creative. Now, if you're applying for an administrative role, maybe the flashiest resume is not necessarily that important, but attention to detail, maybe how well you're able to format your resume. Those things are important because as an admin assistant, you might need to create documents or sensitive information. You might need to check for spelling and make sure that everything is digestible and easy to read. So understanding your audience, and a couple of tips that I have for that is understand your industry. What industry am I applying for? Now that I know what I'm applying for, what position am I applying for? And what do the job descriptions look like? What organizations am I applying for? What does their branding look like? Some organizations are very, very direct in their job description where they say we're only looking for these things. And one of the things you want to be mindful about with your audience, if they're letting you know what they want, make sure to just deliver those deliverables. Do not necessarily go above and beyond. For a lot of recruiters, that's the first step for us to check if you're able to follow instructions. So as much as I would love additional information, make sure you're just providing the resources that are being asked for you. Again, knowing your audience is going to be one of the biggest steps in you preparing for a very successful resume. And also, different organizations maybe have different branding initiatives or require different things. A good rule of thumb is to have your base resume and then update that resume and save it separately for every different location you're applying for, any different job you're applying for. You want to have the same content, but adjust it and tailor it. Not every application should have the same experience. You want to make sure what the employer is looking for and what skills are important for them. Remember, yes, we do care about your experience. I'm going to speak a little bit more about the DaVita perspective and at least our recruiting team. Yes, experience matters for us, but what we're looking for is all that skill set. Other organizations might be looking more for that experience. So I'll be able to give you some tools to be able to kind of tell that better story. So before I move on to that, I want to talk about tips to help you stand out. So we learned a little bit about the foundation of resumes, what should really be included, understanding a little bit about your audience, knowing how to tailor it, and identifying 2 types of resumes that you can use depending on the roles that you're applying. So I hope that these next tips will only help you elevate your resumes and only edit and make them better. So I have created a small resume checklist that will help you kind of cross a couple of these things off. So the first thing is making sure that you're using a professional font. Like I said, knowing your audience. There should be a couple of fonts that you should be using. I highlighted a few here that are very easy to read. In addition to that, a lot of applications in different departments, I know in DaVita, some of our higher volume departments use smart technology to be able to review resumes. Other organizations might do the same, where the technology, or as soon as you submit it, there's an algorithm that's going through and looking for keywords or not. And if you don't have the right type of font, it's going to make it very difficult for that to be able to pick up those things. So making sure you have the right format and font. Now, step 2, is all of my information relevant, right? So if you're applying for a very specific position, for example, you're applying for an analyst position, but all of your experience has been maybe billing and collecting, 2 different roles. So one of the things that you want to identify is go through my entire job history, go through my entire experiences, both professionally and academically, maybe create a timeline so you have an understanding of when you perform certain tasks, when you were at different organizations. And as you're preparing your new resume for this new application, one of the things you want to be mindful about is, am I including the right things? Just because you have 5 certificates doesn't necessarily mean that you should include all of them. You want to be mindful of the role and what is expected from it, and include only the things that are going to fortify and strengthen that opportunity of a recruiter saying, you know what, I might take a calculated risk here. So making sure that you have that relevant information, because every piece of the puzzle will only give you a better, or will only get you closer to that role or that position, or even that interview, which is where we want to land. The resume is just the key that opens the door to that process, right? Now, the other thing I want to highlight is make sure that your resume has active language. You want to make sure that your resume is consistent, focused, and everything that you're talking about is what you were able to deliver. What did you do in the role? A lot of the times when I talk to candidates or when I look at resumes, I feel like I'm looking at job descriptions. And I think when I'm going through a lot of resumes, the first thing I filter out are all the resumes that look like job descriptions, because for me, I don't necessarily want to know everything you did in your role. I want to know what you incorporated in your role. What were you able to change? What were you able to perform? If you had metrics in your role, how well were those metrics? How successful were you? Paint that story for me. At the end of the day, if I don't understand truly what that role or that job function is, that's okay. I'm seeing all the results that you performed. You increased results by 20%. You were able to complete all your projects ahead of schedule. You increased the team performance by 10% at the end of the year. Or maybe you created a project that allowed the team to now work a lot more effectively. Those are the things that I want to know, because again, at least within the DaVita environment and the way that we process and look at candidates, we want to take a holistic approach at everything that you can contribute. And you might not have the right experience that we're looking for, but do you have the skills where I can teach you the job and you be successful? And if that is DaVita, I'm sure that that is the culture at a lot of other organizations. So making sure that you have the right language. You never want to be explaining what you did. Tell me the results, and never be passive about it. Make sure that you're active about that. Make sure that you're highlighting all of those successes. The third piece is using those buzzwords. And I think one of the things that exercises that I like to perform with a lot of the candidates that I mentor or I support is making sure that you pull up your job description side by side as you're working on your resume. And this does a couple of things. I've mentioned before in the past and other events that the job description, the recruiting team spends a valuable large amount of time putting that together. It's probably one of the pieces of documents that really takes a lot of involvement, because we want to be very strategic in providing our potential candidates a transparent look into our expectations, the job requirements, and what we're looking for from candidates. And that is where we will include all of our buzzwords. And that will also kind of let you know and help you prepare for your potential interview. You want to make sure you get into that mentality. So once you have your job description pulled up, for example, some of the words that we use at DaVita, we're looking for someone that can think outside the box. We're looking for someone that can critically think through a gray area. We're looking for someone that's an innovator, right? Those are big buzzwords. So don't necessarily use the same ones, but if you know that I'm looking for someone that can think outside the box, think in a very new way, what words can you use, or how can you tailor your resume to let us as a recruiter know, oh, I'm hiring for this role, and this candidate is showing that, wow, they can think on their feet, and they've shown that they've increased certain metrics that have proven that, right? So leveraging that job description is going to be one of the key pieces to help make your resume successful and help you start preparing for your interview. So we're going to go ahead to our next section. And I want to talk a little bit about cover letters. So not every role requires a cover letter. It is encouraged as a form of adding value to your resume, but your resume truly is the first piece we see. Even if we get applications that have cover letters and resumes, we usually like to go through the resume first because it's a quick identifier of your skills and experience. Now, if there's a gap there, or if there's an issue that I maybe would want more clarity, the cover letter, that's where the cover letter would come in, and you would be able to mold it to fit different examples. So I have a couple of examples here. When I think of the cover letter, you want to think of a story. You're bridging the gap between any questions you might have, a recruiter might have after reviewing your resume. Why do I say that? In resumes, we have bullet point formats where you're only highlighting specific things. You might not be able to tell me all the granular detail, or maybe the detail I needed to know to understand the situation a little bit better. That's where your cover letter comes in. So a couple of things that we can cover here. Time gaps. If you had a time gap and you do not know how to explain it, your resume should be either in chronological order or have all of your experiences with dates on there. Do not eliminate anything. The best thing is to be transparent. If there's a gap, include it, own it. As long as the rest of your resume has key things like your skills, education, and a really strong objective, and you make yourself stand out as a competitive candidate, that will entice me to want to know why the gap is there, and then I will read your story. So it's a great way to highlight any gaps that you might have and for any particular experiences. And then again, remember, we want to be transparent. I've had candidates that reach out to me that are very sorry that they had to take some time off to raise their family. Don't apologize. Life happens and that's part of it, but you can leverage your cover letter to tell me that story. And when you think of your cover letter, I've been doing a little bit of research preparing for this, and I wanted to get a better understanding of cover letters and resumes maybe 10, 15 years from now. Back then, yes, cover letters really were full of information. Maybe you were able to be more compelling about why you chose this organization, what you want to do. In all transparency, cover letters help us fill that void, but keep them short and simple and highlight the number one thing that you know you need to highlight. So in this case, it might be that time gap. Another thing you might want to highlight or use a cover letter for is a change of industry. I myself came from the retail industry and I did that for 10 years. Now I'm in healthcare doing recruiting. Very different. So one of the things that helped me be really successful in that, and now being in the industry and really understanding this, is using your cover letter as a way to let your employer know or potential employer know why you're changing industry. What about retail changed my mind, and why I believe that healthcare is the industry that I belong in. And in that cover letter, I can highlight and reference my resume and say, hey, these are some of the skills that I had in retail that I know I can be really successful in this role. And let me tell you why. And I hope I have an opportunity to talk to you more about it in person, right? Now, another thing might be career alignment. Maybe you're not changing industry. Maybe you're in the same industry that you really, really are passionate for, but maybe the job that you're doing is just not fulfilling. Maybe you have to take a step down, maybe make a lateral move, or maybe go to another department where you really feel like you're going to be a lot more successful and fulfilled. That's totally okay. Use that cover letter to share that story of your clarity and maybe any reflecting that you did that allowed you to realize that this is going to be the next best step for you and your career. So I would say keep it under 5 sentences, maybe 6. Don't do a full page. Keep it nice and short, concise. I think the less on there that's a little bit less information that's more specific to your resume and that can tell a full story is going to be way better for us to identify if you're going to be the best talent for the position we're applying for. And maybe if you're not, knowing the story might allow me to send you to another department or share your information with another peer where I think you will be extremely successful. So I'm going to go ahead and just start closing off by saying that the simpler you say it, the more eloquent it is. Making sure that in your job descriptions, don't write a full paragraph. Highlight maybe the top 5, 6 things that you were able to contribute, be successful in, or support your organization with different initiatives. Make it nice, clear, concise, and if there's any information that I need, include it in the cover letter. That's going to be your gateway into being able to land a very successful interview process. So with that, I want to make sure that I get a little bit more specific with everyone. I'm sure everyone has questions and I want to address them. So we're going to go ahead and transition to our Q&A.
Rada has a question. She's asking, what if you are transitioning to a new field and only have experience in your previous career? However, you are going to school. I'm sorry, it's getting cut out. Okay. You are going to school and working on your certificates. In my case, pharmacy tech. What should you put in the experience?
Yeah, great question. I would still put any of the experience that you do have that you think is relatable to that particular field. So in pharmacy tech, I'm not too familiar with them, but I can identify that you need to have some customer service. I identify that you need to be able to think quickly on your feet, that you need to be able to follow protocol, that you need to be able to be assertive and make quick decisions. So that's just what I'm thinking that role function is looking for. So if that's where you want to go, take a look at all of your past experience and see in all of your experience, whether it's educational or any other type of career, can you pinpoint certain experiences in your past that you can include to strengthen that? A good option for you as well would be using a cover letter. That way you can explain to them that you're going back to school, you're reshifting your focus to this new career, and you're eager to leverage some of your past experiences to be successful. So never put yourself down or never think that you don't have the right experience. I'm sure that there's going to be specific skills or specific things that you experience that will be transferable. So focus on the things that are transferable. Maybe there are applications that you're learning to use that they will use as well. That could be a hard skill that you can include as well on your resume.
Would you recommend a custom resume for that type of situation or a chronological resume?
I would say a custom, because for that one, if you're going into a different career path, you want to highlight everything first that is going to make you stand out and let the recruiter know, hey, these are the reasons why I can do the job. Now take a look at my past experience or take a look at some of my other skills. Always start with all of the things that are going to make you be successful in that new role.
Okay. Jose, there's another question. It kind of relates to, what if somebody has like a 10-year gap? Let's say someone's been like a stay-at-home mom for a while and they're just coming back now to the workforce, so they're going to school or they're returning. What would you recommend for somebody with such a big gap?
Yeah, great question. So 2 weeks ago, we actually interviewed a candidate for one of our positions. They had been out of the workspace for about 10 years. And she was very apologetic about leaving the industry. And she just really wanted to focus on her family. That is totally okay. And I think employers understand that you have a life, right? So it's okay. I would leverage a cover letter that she used and I think was very successful in allowing us to interview her. And so in that cover letter, she highlighted what she did a little bit in the past, which was mostly accounts receivable, not necessarily in healthcare, mostly in the auto industry. And she left to start her family. So she highlighted a couple of things that she did with her family and why she's ready to come back to the industry. Then she highlighted why healthcare and not auto, and why in this point in her life, she thinks that she can use some of her past experiences to be successful. That was about a 10-year gap there. And this candidate was offered. We were able to interview them. And in the interview process, they were able to leverage, even though it was a long time ago, they were able to find good examples about them critically thinking and being able to adapt to situations. So for this, I would say leverage that cover letter, paint the best story possible, and never apologize.
Awesome. Great. Anybody else have questions while we have the expert here? You can unmute your mic and you can ask the question.
Mhm.
We're really lucky to have him here. He's the expert. He's the one who's going through the resumes to determine if you're going to come in for that interview.
Mhm. Any questions?
Question.
Yeah.
Like Jasmine does.
Hi. If you're making business, you're making a resume, right? If you made up your own business, right? Like, say my business, my own business, like.
We're having difficulty hearing you, Jasmine. You're like breaking up. It's difficulty hearing you.
Do you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. I'm just saying, like, if you make your own business, like, how make, like makeup or hair, and then make a resume of it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
That's what I'm
yeah.
asking. Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, so whatever experience you have, yes, you should always have a resume. Create a resume template, have it saved on your computer, and your resume should be something that you revisit often. So it's okay if it changes, it's okay if it adapts. And if you have trouble putting a resume together, we have the power of Google now. I can go on Google and research resume generator, and there's at least 20. So
Right.
there's a lot of resources for you to leverage.
That's why I was learning that you can. I was making I want my own business of makeup, hair. You know, I love it.
Yeah.
I want to learn experience.
Yeah, of course.
Sounds great though. Sounds great.
Awesome.
Thank you for your
Jasmine.
question.
Jasmine and everyone
Thank you,
else,
though.
we have a class here at our school called Career Readiness, and that's what we help you do also. And it's one of the first programs that we have you take for that reason, is to get you ready for the workforce.
Oh, that sounds
Okay.
great. Yeah.
And Ami's a great instructor on that. So she'll give you a lot of great tips. So,
Yeah.
so thank you for your question.
Yeah.
Jose, there's another question.
Mhm.
They're asking, what would be the best way to address a 5-year absence due to an injury?
Okay. I think I think we're focusing on things that are out of your control. So if it was an injury and due to that injury, you're not able to work, again, I would leverage your cover letter for that. Make sure, depending if it's in the same industry, same field, you just want to return, I would encourage a chronological resume and then attach a cover letter to that, explaining what the issue was, why you got injured, and why you're not able to return. And then highlight all the reasons why you're ready now, why this moment in time is the right time. Because then that'll let me know, okay, I don't want to hire someone that potentially could get sick again. I want to be mindful of that depending on the team or the role that they're applying for. It might not be successful I might not be setting them up for success, right? So if you highlight to me why you're ready now and this is the right role for you, that will help increase maybe the chances in you getting an interview.
Perfect. And for anyone who's having difficulty formatting a resume, because it can be challenging, especially for the first time, Huntington Beach Adult School does have a free tool for you, and it's called Optimal Resume. It's completely free. You go to our main webpage under Student Support, and it's a blue icon. What it will do, you have an opportunity to pick, there's over 100 resumes, different types of samples, and it gives you the opportunity to create a professional looking resume. You will just go in and make whatever changes. And then it gives you an opportunity to pick a reviewer. So the reviewer could be myself, it could be Valerie, it could be part of a homework assignment for career readiness where they have you pick. And then we're able to give you some great tips, or we're able to go into it ourselves and make the changes. So another free tool that I would make sure that you take full advantage of.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Arlene said. I think there's a lot of times where I go to job fairs or get a chance to communicate with a lot of new students, and I get the same questions being asked. And I think like there's a lot of resources that are available for all of you students that you can take advantage of. So if there's anything that I can do now is just highlight that, you hear this from Arlene all the time. I'm sure you hear it from professors all the time. You're hearing it from someone that does the hiring. Use those resources so that you can be successful. There are some candidates that spend a lot of money paying someone to do their professional resume. And yes, the resume might look good, but that doesn't mean that they're going to get that job. So use all the resources that are available for you.
Yeah. And piggybacking off of that, one of the places where I used to work was the career services. I had a resume where the candidate presented to me to look at, and she spent $100 on it. And I found so many mistakes on it that I went in and I corrected it for free. I told her, this is the issue why you're not getting called, because you are just using this one resume and you're not personalizing it for the jobs you want to go to. For example, medical assistant. If I say that my objective is to get a position with a pediatric office, but I'm sending off that resume to family practice, to podiatry, to plastic surgeon, I know for myself, I'm going to look at it and think, well, I don't think you'd be happy here because your objective is saying that you want to work for pediatric, but yet you're sending it to me.
Yeah.
So that's another thing to do also with your resume. Don't just be cookie cut and that's the same one you're going to send out.
Correct.
Yes, and so I left the link for the optimal resume in the chat. It's hbas.optimalresume.com. If you don't get it this time, just know it's there under student support. I'm the college and career specialist, so the link to optimal resume is on my page. And what I love to do is help people find a new career. So Jose did a new career. He went from retail and now he's in healthcare, and it feels like such a good match for him. He's so good at what he does. And we want everyone to have that feeling of accomplishment, that they're satisfied in their job, they're aligned with their career, it's according to their values. So one class we do teach where we do go over resumes is career readiness, which is being offered this summer. To attend any of the summer classes, we are having an information session in 2 weeks on Friday, but please feel free to explore our website for our summer classes. We are also teaching Word and Excel because computer software is power. It is the one skill you really need to have to get any type of job, to get your foot in the door, to build that experience. And we are also lucky to have our pharmacy technician teacher here with us, Ms. Pam Canlis. Can you tell them a little bit about your program, Pam?
Hi, thanks for having me here today. So if you're interested in the pharmacy tech program, we do have an online option, a face-to-face option, especially now with this pandemic. We do have that variety for you. The good thing about this one, you're in, you're out, 3 months in, 3 months out, you can get a job, you're licensed. When you're licensed, no one can take that away from you. And you also can get national certification, which allows you to work in all 50 states. So if California is just saturated, you can move to Arizona and your national certification is applicable and you can use it there. So if you have any questions, I'll put it in the chat where you can reach me on my email. You will not be able to reach us by phone because we work remotely right now, but you're more than welcome to reach me on my email. Thank you and good luck to your career choice.
And I see there is a medical terminology class being offered, which was kind of like a prerequisite to any of our medical classes that we're offering. Is that right, Pam? The medical terminology class?
Or Tracy?
Nami?
Sorry about that. Yeah, so the medical terminology class, this is a pathway if you want to go into medical assisting, billing and coding. This is the first class we want you to take before entry into your core classes. Pharmacy technicians already built in, but for billing and coding and medical assisting, we encourage you to start with career readiness first. And if you jump into your core classes, we want you to have, it's advantageous for you to have medical terminology. So we are offering that in the summer.
And what we tell people, the advantage of taking our classes is that they're short term and it can change the trajectory of your whole career. They're less than a year, start in a new career, and then you can be making a decent wage supporting your family if you do want to continue your education at a community college, end up with an AA degree or a 4-year degree. So Arlene's going to tell you about her career, how she started out as a medical assistant.
Oh, for me? Okay. Also, if you're interested in our programs, I'm the job developer. I'm actually built into our career tech programs, which means that you would meet with me. And if you're one of our medical billers, I would actually be hopefully connecting you to Jose as well. So yes, we were talking about resumes, how we hold different careers and what you should put on your resume. I share with everybody that when I was 18 years old, I wasn't certain what I wanted to do. I was going to college and I took a medical assisting course. I ended up working in work comp and urgent care for almost 16 years. But then I took on a new role. I started working the past 10 years over in career services now. So now I've worn multiple hats. There was a time where I was a stay-at-home mom. I stayed home for 4 years with my kids. But during that time, I still wanted to work. So I got a little part-time job at the time, a store, which I don't even think is around anymore, KB Toys. And then I did a little stint at Z's Candies, just so I could still be home with my kids when they were little and at the same time make a little money. But I never want to discount those jobs because those jobs provided me great customer service, how to work with people, how to talk with people. When I was 18 years old, I could never do what I'm doing right now because I was too shy and I couldn't speak publicly. But those jobs kind of forced me to get out of my shell and to be able to speak. So that's just a little bit. So does anybody have any other questions? Because again, we have an expert here and it's a great opportunity to ask questions.
Yeah, feel free to ask any questions about resumes, anything about recruiting. I want to make sure that this is a safe space for you guys to ask any question. There is no dumb question here. Anything about the recruiting process, about any other industries or specific questions about your resumes.
Jose, maybe you can answer this question. Let's say I go to DaVita and my resume is great. I go in, I have a job interview, but unfortunately, I didn't do well in the job interview. I didn't present myself well. What happens now? When do I have an opportunity to reapply with you?
Yeah, great question. So rule of thumb, if you're interested in any of our office opportunities in our corporate office, those ones after you apply and for some reason, maybe you just did not pass that interview, you will have a 4-month gap before you're able to be considered again. So you can submit applications right away, but we want to give you those 4 months so that maybe you can strengthen your interviewing skills. Maybe you realize that you needed a little bit more experience. You can go back and get that more additional experience that you might need. So for corporate offices, that's a 4-month gap. Now in our clinical sites is 6 months. So if you're applying to be like a PCT or a support admin in a clinical setting, and if you do not pass the interview portion for those, that's going to be a 6-month waiting period before you're eligible. So you can continue to submit applications. You just will not be eligible to be considered until that time has passed by.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I know that's always a question too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And make certain, please, because I see students after they finish and they come meet with me, and there's certain things they don't put onto their resume, such as I was a caregiver for my grandmother for 5 years. But they don't put it on there. It's like this big 5-year gap. And then I have to say, no, you were self-employed, you were working private. And then I start putting up that you dispense medications. What were you doing? Going to doctor's visits. I would help with this, I'd help with that. It's like all these great experience, don't discount it. Make sure you put it on your resume.
Exactly. One of the things I do want to mention is I keep referring to this job description. Wherever you're applying for, pull that job description, and you want to utilize that job description as your navigator through your entire experience in the candidate process. So your job description lets you know what you're potentially expecting. It lets you know what your job function is and what you're going to be responsible for and what the company's looking for. So already you can tailor your resume for that specific company. And now let's say you do get a call back and they want to talk to you in person for an interview. You can leverage that same job description to now find out, okay, they need someone with these 3 skills. And so now that gives you an opportunity to reflect, pull your resume and reflect. They're looking for someone that can critically think. In all of my experiences, similar to what Arlene mentioned, maybe you were at home taking care of someone that was sick, but you were giving them medication. You had to follow up. You had to make sure you were time managing because you want to be on schedule. You're doing a lot of things that maybe you never realized went into doing this. So having that job description to do a little bit more of an assessment, to be able to think more clearly and objectively is going to be one of the best advices that I have for you, because you're already tailoring yourself to the job that you're wanting to apply.
Right. And then another thing, like Jose was saying about the job description, know that job description, because a lot of times when you go on a job interview, the job interview questions are coming from the job description because they want you to know a certain task, and you're saying you do. And if he asks you a question and you have no idea what he's talking about, that's going to be one of the components of you possibly not getting the job. So know the job description as well when you go out for that job interview.
I will add to
And
say
don't
that.
lie. No lying on your resume, because you're going to get caught.
Very transparent. Be as transparent as possible. If there, whatever you need to be honest about, make sure it's on your resume, because once you get offered a job, some organizations do a very deep background check and anything can populate. So just be very transparent. You want to start off on the right foot. In addition to what Arlene mentioned, I think one of the most common things that happens during our interview sessions, we are very big on asking what your understanding of the job description is. And we get a lot of the times where candidates, you can tell, never read the job description. And they're like, oh yeah, well, I want to be a revenue specialist. Okay, well, what do you think they do? Or what's your understanding of the job? Oh yeah, well, I think I just do this. Well, you didn't read the job description. So making sure that you read it, because ask yourself that question, what is my understanding of this role? Because if you can kind of explain it, it's okay if you're off. That's your understanding of what you're reading. But then that lets us as recruiters know, oh, they understand the high level overview, or they kind of get the job. Let me just explain a little bit more. But if you say, oh yeah, I didn't get a chance to read it, then that lets me know you're not invested in this opportunity. So yeah.
Exactly. And then we kind of mentioned, again, don't lie on your resume, because I've had candidates to say, well, who's going to hire me if I don't have work experience? So they kind of exaggerate. I personally have worked with somebody who lied on their resume. And I was a new employee. I didn't really know. I assumed this guy was knowledgeable. And while I was on the job, I come to work and I see them walking him out within 3 months of me working there. And then I come to find out because he lied on his resume, and it eventually came out with resources and so forth that they went and checked on that. The degree, I guess he lied about a degree that he had. He never had a degree. He lied about work experience. So that's why I encourage you. You may think that you passed and you got through the door, but they do background, and it may not take a week or two. It could take 2 to 3 months, but how embarrassing. I know I'd rather not lie and be walked out the door and be embarrassed, because it's 15 years later and I still remember that story, and I still remember him being walked out the door.
Right. Yeah. Anything you do leaves an experience or a memory behind on other people. So it's part of your branding. So be mindful about that. But to tag in with what you just said, Arlene, I think, yeah, do not lie anytime on your resume, especially about your experience. Different organizations interview differently. But if you ever hear of an organization saying that they're going to perform a behavioral-based interview, do not lie, because during those interviews, we're checking for your understanding. And if you don't really have that experience, it'll be very noticeable, and then you will not pass that interview. So just don't lie, be authentic, do a lot of reflecting. That way you really understand what your past experiences have to offer.
Okay. And after the interview with you, is it okay for them to follow up with you, to give you an email or a phone call?
Yeah, so after they go ahead and interview, they will go ahead and they will have the direct recruiter's information. And so whatever recruiter is assigned to you, you can go ahead and reach out to them to follow up. And if for some reason you did not pass your interview, it's totally okay. What I will suggest is never leave empty-handed. If you didn't pass, let's find out why. That one of the things you want to think about is continuous improvement is a way of life. If you don't get any feedback, you're never going to get any better. And, sometimes it's okay to ask. So what I would suggest is, if you did not pass your interview, talk to your recruiter and just say, you know what, thank you for the opportunity. Is it okay if I please request some feedback so I can just do some self-reflecting? And we would love to give you some feedback, whether it's there's some issues on your resume, or, we were concerned a little bit more on your time management. that gives you an opportunity to go back to the drawing board, clean up whatever, practice whatever, get the confidence to interview better. And then when you apply somewhere else, that should not be an issue because you were able to be actionable about doing the steps necessary to be better, right? So ask for feedback every time.
Perfect. Okay, anybody else have any questions before we begin to wrap up? Jose, I want to thank you so much. Valerie and I both want to thank you for being part because you've come back for part 2 with us. I know you have a busy schedule, even though we're here virtually, we're still very, very busy. But I thank you so much for the knowledge and the skills that you provided for us today, because that was a great wealth of wisdom that you provided us.
Yeah.
So thank you so
This
much.
is your second time seeing Jose. Some of you caught his branding webinar a couple weeks ago. That's why we invited him back for a more in-depth webinar on resumes, but he did touch on interviewing and he touched on branding through LinkedIn. So if you have a LinkedIn account, you can have your resume on there and employers can see you that way also. So we're really glad that you came back to give us such great information about resumes, which is so important to get the interview. And we were very happy to introduce our teachers, tell you a little bit about our summer classes, and we hope that you'll take some time to register and upgrade your skills this summer, maybe start a new career. If there's no other questions, we're going to let you know.
Valerie, don't forget, we have one more next week.
That's what I'm going to do right now, Arlene. Thank you. So our last webinar of the series, Essential Skills for the New Economy, is going to end, and we're celebrating Asian American Heritage Month. So we are having OCAPICA join us. OCAPICA stands for Orange County Asian Pacific Islander Community Alliance, and they do a lot of great things for the community. We're going to have Lillian Tang, who is a case manager for the Youth Employment Services, 18 to 24, and then Annie Nguyen, who is in charge of their policy program, who's going to tell us about social services. Some of you might have problems right now getting a job because you don't have childcare, or you're missing transportation, or you don't have interview clothing. That's why we're including social services in our last webinar, because it's great to talk about employment, but if you have issues that are barriers keeping you from employment, then you're going to want to get those also addressed. So we have some great resources coming out to end our series. Some of you have been with us for all of the webinars, and we appreciate your support. We hope you've gotten great information. So be sure to join us next week, same time, same link for our last webinar. And Jose, is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, I'm really fortunate to be part of this team. I'm so excited to be able to share any knowledge. I get a lot of fulfillment by helping a lot of students. So Arlene and Valerie, I appreciate your partnership. And if you guys are interested in any employment with DaVita, or just want to get in touch with me for maybe a one-on-one, that's something I would love to offer. So just connect with Arlene and she will get us connected together.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And please join us next week. Valerie and I have some surprises and tricks up our sleeves for you guys. We have some surprises, so we hope that you can join us. So anything else, Valerie, you want to add? Anything anybody else wants to add? Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Jose. You were awesome.
Thank you for joining, everyone.
Keep continuing, keep working hard. See you later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Did Valerie hang up?
Everyone.
No, she's still on.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank
everyone.
you.